Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. As you're aware, today we are having a webinar on energy storage, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. And my name is David Njugi. The CEO of the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, also a member of IPEA. And to start off, I would like to invite the president of the association, Professor Da Silva, to give some remarks as we begin. Prof, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, David. Good to see you in good health. And I welcome all the participants. I think for now have 27. Yeah, I hope we will have some good deliberations here regarding this important matter concerning storage. Yeah, as you know very well, Africa is endowed with a lot of potential in solar energy, photovoltaic, and also in wind. But the problem of these two sources of power is that they are intermittent, and they may fail you because I mean the sun for sure leaves at 6:30 p.m. and they comes back only following day 6:30 p.m. So for those 12 hours we may have use for electricity, but the sun is not there to fuel our panels to produce electricity. So the idea of storage is of essence, especially for this kind of intermittent source of energy. Now, electricity. Now, what happens is that there are several possibilities people have been doing, like when you have an excess of solar, you can use that excess to do electrolyzing of the water, take hydrogen from the water, and then you store that hydrogen that you can convert it into electricity using fuel cells or some other technology like steam, and then you can use the solar energy that you use to get the hydrogen to produce electricity when the sun is not there. The same is valid for wind. And it's interesting to know that today, one of the people speaking is someone who is doing a research sponsored by a UK institution concerned about energy. They call themselves Catalyst 7, and they have sponsored a company in the UK called Stimology, and this company has chosen Strathmore Energy Research Center as a partner to study this, to do research on this thing. For now, obviously, the price is still an issue because a kilowatt hour that you get out of hydrogen once you have taken it from the water is something like close to 50 cents of a dollar, which is a lot of money still. Yeah, but what we are doing is we are going to receive soon one system that can use the hydrogen to generate power, 25 kilowatts only, but it will be very useful for us to do research and see how we can further this very clean way of getting electricity stored for the moments when your source of variable source may fault, yeah, may fail you. So IPEA is meant to be a think tank. The best brains in energy in this country should be here, and we are here, and we really welcome the people, the panelists who are going to make their presentation. This thing is for now is the future. Though in Japan for a number of years already, they have been using on a systematic manner these fuel cells that is actually precisely getting electricity from hydrogen. So I think it can spark some good, interesting ideas, and then make some of you be aware of what is happening in other quarters in this country, and eventually help you to join together and begin some synergy in this important area of electricity storage. So I wish you a very fruitful deliberation. Dave Njugi Maina is a very good moderator, very dynamic. So I am sure we are in for some good enjoyment for about 1.5 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for that, for those comments and introducing the topic of the day. As you are aware, energy storage, as Prof said, is a very important topic, and energy storing moving forward will continually play a critical role in, especially in grids where renewables are becoming more and more, play a bigger role. So I think this topic is very opportune, and we have a very distinguished panel of speakers who will be giving us insights on energy storage. And I'll quickly introduce them and then give them a chance to say something so that you can also hear their voices before they speak. We have Mr. Yusuf Sanga, who is a renewable energy consultant. We have Mr. Michael Gonji, who is an electrical engineer working for KenGen. We have Mr. Samuel Waite, who is also a renewable energy specialist. Also works for Chloride Exide. We have Engineer Jonathan Kimeu, who is the head of operations at IPEA, as well as an alumni of Life Academy. We have Dr. Engineer Evan Murimi, who is an energy specialist, researcher, and lecturer. And I will be moderating this session. I think I've already introduced myself. And in that order, I'll allow the panelists to briefly tell us who they are and what they do, just to introduce very briefly in a few minutes what their opening remarks will be, so that we can get to know them a bit more. And then we'll go into the panel discussion, and hopefully then we'll have some Q&A at the end of it. So it's an interactive session. Feel free to ask questions. I would request that as the panelists engage, feel free to write your question on the chat box as well, to also introduce yourself there, so that we know who is in the room, and also pick up the questions. The questions that you put there, I'll be checking, and when we get to the Q&A session, I'll make sure that most, if not all, questions are answered. So we go straight to the panel, and each will be given a chance to just say some opening remarks and introduce themselves, and so that we can know them a bit more. And then I'll be moderating the panel after that. We'll start with Mr. Yusuf Sanga. Mr. Yusuf Sanga, kindly just introduce yourself so that people get to know you. And then we go to Mr. Michael. Yusuf.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Feel free to, for the panelists to share your video if your bandwidth is good enough. Otherwise, you can speak, you can just activate your audio as well. Mr. Yusuf, karibu.
Thank you, Mr. David. My name is Yusuf Kipchumba
Mr. Yusuf, I can't hear you.
Sanga. I'm a renewable energy enthusiast
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I'm not sure if I'm the only one.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Am I the only one, or can you hear Mr. Yusuf?
I can hear him.
Yes, I
Go on,
think
Mr.
I may
Yusuf.
be having problems. Mr. Yusuf? Esther, am I the one with the problem, or are you able to hear Mr. Yusuf?
Yes, I could hear him, but I think he has he's working on his internet. Maybe we could have someone else.
Okay. Michael Gonji, you can proceed. Let's wait for Yusuf.
So thank you, David, for the opportunity to speak in this very important session. My name is Michael Ogonji. I work for Kenya Electricity Generating Company. I'm an engineer, and I'm in charge of conducting and managing of feasibility studies. So we conduct and manage a number of studies, and basically that's why I'm here on this discussion, is to look at the pumped hydro storage, which KenGen for a while has been looking at it in terms of means for energy storage based on our portfolio and new sites. So over the years, I've gained experience in a number of conducting feasibility studies. I've also worked in the regulatory environment for the energy sector, PPA development, and on PPP projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for that. The next person to introduce himself is Mr. Sami Waite.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, David, for welcoming us. Sami Waite is my name. I work for Chloride Oxide company, basically on the renewable energy aspect, with some good background in engineering. My background is engineering, and I'm happy to be here today. We'll be sharing a bit of knowledge of what we know, and also I'm intending also to learn from the plenary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sami, for that introduction. We go to Engineer Kimeu. Engineer, karibu.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you so very much for the members for finding time to join in this session. My name is Jonathan Kimeu. I have been in the space of energy for some time. Today I will introduce myself as alumni of Live Academy. Just brief on Live Academy. I think the Live Academy, a Sweden-based non-NGO, started a program to promote capacity building in Eastern and South African countries. I was lucky to be members in what they call RP1, the first group, with a few other members in the sector in the country. And that is where I would say probably this discussion started, where they are looking at enhancing capacity to enable these countries to uptake more renewable energy. So our group, when we were asked to identify the pressing points for the country to allow it to uptake renewable energy, to increase the uptake of renewable energy, we identified a number of issues. And when we brainstormed, we ended up agreeing that we prioritize energy storage as one of the key things, if looked at, would enhance the uptake of renewable energy in the country. And that's what we did. We handled as our project for 2 or 3 years. There were a few findings we came up with. And I think the first discussion on this energy storage in the country was organized by this team in Intercontinental in July 2019. So this will be a follow-up of the same. So it's my pleasure to participate in this discussion. I think then we will say more in the course of this discussion. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, thank you, Engineer, for that introduction. Then we go to Dr. Ivan Murimi. Daktari, karibu.
Yes, David, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Murimi. I'm a researcher and a consultant in the energy field. I've done a couple of researches or a number of researches within Sub-Saharan Africa. For this particular reason, I would introduce myself as working on a hydrogen project, which is actually going to be the first one where we're going to have a system installed in the country early next year to produce green hydrogen. I think I'll introduce it as we continue the webinar. Back to you, David.
Thank you. Is Mr. Yusuf back? I can't see him. Mr. Yusuf? Yusuf, are you back? Okay, I think we wait for him to get on board. But as we do so, I think we will kick off with the panel discussion. As I introduced, we're discussing matters of energy storage today. And I'll request, I'll start with Mr. Michael Gonji from KenGen, maybe to just give an overview of energy storage as we kick off the discussion and how it fits within our energy system here in Kenya. Mr. Michael?
So thank you again, David, for the chance again. So over the couple of years, energy storage has become very crucial in our grid based on the kind of investment we've had. We've invested in the energy sector. As you all know, a while back, our demand was outstripping the supply that we could able to provide. So we were in a situation where we had shortfall of energy, especially during the peak times. So we invested a lot in emergency power supplies and the diesel generators to meet the gap, and started a process of investing heavily in big energy projects, the geothermals and the wind projects that are coming in. So what has happened is that we've been able to meet the demand for electrical energy to a point where we have some reserve, which is good for any country based on the number of units you have and the demand and the supply situation. But over the years, we've invested a lot in renewable energy. So that will be the wind and the solar and our geothermal energy, which is used for the base load for the country, replacing hydro as the main source of energy over the couple of years because of the investment, both from private and public bodies like KenGen. So what has happened is, due to the intermittent nature of renewable, you need a system where we're faced with a system where we have a lot of renewable energy during the off-peak times, probably late in the night, early in the morning, and then we have to run our diesel units during the peak to meet the high peak. So what has happened is we have a situation where there's energy that can be used in the system, but because of the laws of physics, it's storing energy is quite difficult. So once it's there, it has to be used. Let's say like wind. So if you have a lot of wind during the night, so the only thing that happens is you have to displace another form of energy, which can be stored. Let's say like the hydro, or you reduce on your geothermal, or you vent geothermal, or you offset another form of energy. So over the years, there's been a need, and this need has been actually realized from all the planning committees in the energy sector, that we need some form of storage. So basically, the storage, in a nutshell, in Kenya's case, would come in very handy in that you'll be able to store cheap energy and clean energy from your from the high geothermal energy you have, or the wind energy you have, or probably solar energy also. If that's the case, then be able to offset some other form of expensive energy during the peak time, to try and limit, to try and shave the peak shaving, so that your load curve, your daily load curve, becomes a bit smooth, and you don't have very low low demand during the low peaks, and then very high demand during the high peak. So what that happens is you increase demand during the low peaks, because the kind of storage that you'll be investing will be a load during the low peak, charging or pumping or creating hydrogen or any other form of energy that can be stored. And then during the high peak, you use it now as a generator to be able to reduce your generation on thermal power. So for the projections we have for the country, for the next 20, 30 years, there's a lot of renewable energy in the system. That brings a challenge that you need some bit of storage that can also give you ancillary services, the frequency and the voltage stability. So the technology that on energy storage, it's a benefit because most of them have the capabilities of giving you some system stability to be able to manage the system. So what this does is also it helps the country increase its potential for renewable energy, because the more stable your system is, the more you can integrate the renewable energy, the intermediate, especially the solar and the wind, because when you have a stable system that has also capacity to bring in large wind projects or large solar projects. So this also increases the renewable energy portfolio for the country. And as I said, looking forward, it's very critical that we look at energy storage from a country's perspective and from the projects of meeting the supply and demand curve. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for those insights about storage and the need for storage in our energy system. I'll ask Dr. Ivan Murimi, what other ways can energy be stored, just for us to appreciate this topic of energy storage? Maybe in brief, what are the other ways of energy storage that can be utilized?
Yeah, thanks, David. We do have a couple of ways where that have been used to store energy, and some have been useful in our country. Others have not been very useful, say, for our country. For instance, one of the common ways that we know about is looking at, say, what we'd call electrochemical energy storage systems. Here we are talking about things like batteries. We are very well aware of the lead acid and the lithium ion batteries. Of course, researchers are still coming up with more. Michael has just talked about pumped hydro. Here we are talking about the mechanical means of energy storage. And besides pumped hydro, we also have other techniques like compressed air, flywheel, and of course, we must be aware of thermal energy storage techniques. Again, for smaller systems, because now I've not been told the scope. For smaller systems, we might also have electrical methods, especially when you're talking about things like supercapacitors or superconducting magnets. And then we can come to what interests us. That is the chemical methods. And the chemical method that we have a bias towards as Strathmore is hydrogen energy storage, whereby we are targeting to use hydrogen to generate hydrogen, or what we call green hydrogen, from the grid, and use, say, the solar PV that is available within Strathmore, and we use that to store energy during the off-peak periods, as Michael has said. And then we can generate, we can again use the hydrogen to generate electricity when we go to the peak periods, or when we go to the periods where we do not have PV power. I hope that answers the question, David.
Yeah, maybe just to ask, what do you mean by green hydrogen?
Now,
does it mean the source of hydrogen is green, or what does it mean?
Of course, it's not the color. Now, hydrogen can be generated from different methods, and based on the methods, scientists or researchers have decided to name them to or using colors. For instance, we can have gray hydrogen, and this one is mostly generated from natural gas or coal, whereby they go through a process called gasification. You can also have blue hydrogen, again, still from natural gas or coal. You still do gasification, but now because of course, these are fossil fuels, so we end up having a lot of emissions, carbon emissions. Then we can incorporate with carbon capture and storage technology, so that you can see we are trying to make it a little cleaner. Again, we can also use methane to generate hydrogen, and here we call it turquoise hydrogen. I hope I used the correct pronunciation. And then we can go to the green hydrogen. Here we say we are generating the same hydrogen, but from renewable electricity through a process called electrolysis. So the greenness in it is the same we talk of green energy, in that we are not expected to generate any carbon emissions. It's expected to be carbon neutral. If you combust hydrogen in presence of oxygen, of course, you simply get water.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusuf Sanga, I hope you're back. Maybe you could just tell us, what are the benefits of energy storage? Is it something that can cut on power costs in this country? Why should we be thinking about storage in this country? Mr. Yusuf? Okay, I think we are still having challenges with Yusuf. I'll throw that question to Engineer Kimeu. Engineer Kimeu, maybe you could attempt to answer that.
Thank you, David. I want to build up on what my fellow panelists have said, and I think it is very clear that then the need of energy storage is there. The justification is straightforward. Then in terms of technologies, again, then we understand the different types of technologies. There have been the traditional technologies which has been used, and we have now the emerging technologies. Dr. Murimi have just pointed out the issues of green hydrogen. There have been many other discussions. Supercapacitive systems I've seen being developed in the country. But I think from my perspective then, and probably also what we looked at in the program I mentioned earlier, was what would be the frameworks now required to enhance development of energy storage in the country. As we speak, we know we have a number of facilities, majorly the small mini grids, which have small sizes of energy storage. Probably have to 100 kilowatt to that size. But then what will it take for the country for us to have dispatchable size of energy storage? And I think those are the things we need to do. And also in the lines of technical capacity, then when you look at our curriculum, both at the university, both at technical institutions, then are we training specialists to these fields? That's that. Then if you wanted to deploy such size of energy storage, do you need to, can you get that training locally, or you need to go outside for training? In terms of policy frameworks, then what policy frameworks need to be put in place for this to be actualized, including compensation frameworks? Then if I build a dispatchable size of energy storage, apart from storing energy, dispatching energy, then I could offer other services like grid support, Black Start, and all those. Then we have compensation frameworks for us to be able to actualize that. So I think this webinar, these are some of the discussion we need to have, then probably even document them in a way then that we can follow them through to see a number of them are actualized. Thanks, David.
Okay, thank you. And we'll be going into the details of that. Just want to bring in Mr. Sami White. And I know you work in a battery company, and maybe it would be good to hear from you what battery storage is looking at the moment, and what kind of systems or technologies are applicable for solar, for example, grid storage, if you may put it that way. What are the differences? There are solar batteries, there are automotive batteries. Maybe just some insights about what is the difference and what battery storage has in store for Kenya.
Thank you very much, David. I'll start with the first question in terms of battery, the differences of different types of batteries we've talked about. Depending on the application, there are quite a number of batteries that you can use. You can have what we call starting batteries, okay? And starting batteries are basically batteries that are used for automotive use. Basically just to start the engine, and the work of that battery is done, okay? Then from there, the other battery that is very common in this particular part of the world is the solar battery. And the solar battery is what we normally use for renewable energy, or if you want to store energy for later use, okay? Then you might also have batteries that we call traction batteries. Traction batteries are batteries that we use for moving stuff around. If you go to warehouses that are sort of certified for either food or pharmaceutical application, you can't just move. Let's say you want to start things with a forklift. You can't just move in with a very heavy fuming forklift or a diesel forklift. So you can use a traction battery to run this particular forklift. And the main there are very categorical differences between all these types of batteries. And the construction is they differ a lot, okay? So you'll find that a solar battery will have thicker plates because they're meant to store energy and be drained. You drain some very minimal or small currents for a longer duration of time. If you look at starter batteries, they have thinner plates, and they're basically meant to give you high currents for a shorter duration of time. So all these types of batteries, they are constructed totally differently. And you'll find that people sometimes they switch them around. And once you start switching them around, maybe you are using an automotive battery in a solar application, you'll find that most of the time it do not give you the service that you needed. Right. Then back to you, David.
Okay. Thank you, Sami. And maybe just to follow up on that, maybe just a question. Why is energy storage not common in commercial scale grid applications at the moment?
The reason why it's not that common is the cost. The cost of storage in the whole renewable energy aspect is storage has the highest cost component of cost. And the reason why that happens is the technologies that we have currently, they are still very expensive, very, very expensive. As you've heard the other colleagues, as the engineer said, things like supercapacitors, they are not cheap. Look at lithium-ion batteries, they're not cheap. So if you look at the end, if you look at how much energy your overall, if you compute the total energy that your battery will give you for the period of its lifetime, and you compare it, let's say, with what you pay for grid, you'll find that it's still cheaper for you to harvest, to get energy from grid as compared to stored energy. And the reason is because of the cost.
Do you have a figure in terms of the percentage of investment that goes into energy storage for example, for off-grid systems where storage is being applied?
Yes, yes. I mean,
about battery storage.
Yes, if you look at overall investment cost, if you're doing an off-grid system, the overall investment cost for storage will be anything between 40 to 60% of your investment. And it doesn't matter which technology you're using, whether you're using lithium-ion supercapacitors, you're using lead-acid batteries, the overall investment will be anything between 40 to 60%.
Okay, that's quite a cost, and thank you, Sami, for that. Michael, if I can come back to you, maybe just to go a bit deeper in terms of pump storage, and the question I have for you is, how does pump storage compare with other types of storage, and can we utilize these for the hydro plants that we have at the moment? Can we easily apply that already? And is it cost effective, or what benefit would arise from that?
Thank you again for the question. So a lot of research has been done on energy storage, and I think KenGen is also about to conduct one on energy storage, just to look at the different methods of storage that are available and the economic viability of each. But when you compare pump storage with other forms of storage, you find that I think one of the key issues that pump storage gives you is a bit of flexibility and the mechanical component, what you call the inertia in the grid. So you're having these are huge machines that are on the grid and they're spinning. So you get a form of inertia, which is very good for grid stability, for fast action of trying to give any auxiliary service in the grid. Then I think when you look at hydro, it's something that has been there over a number of years. So the technology is tested, proven, and then it's not very dynamic in that it does not become obsolete after 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line. So it's something that is quite tested and proven. So in terms of offering storage, I think that on the cost economics compare with each other types of storage is very competitive. If you look at pump storage, the issue would be the location you're getting. How the project being developed? Where is the upper reservoir? Where is the lower reservoir? The distance between them, and things like that. The cost of energy during pumping. Because if you look at the pump storage, I think in the world we're having an overall efficiency of about 75%, meaning you're spending more energy to pump than what you generate from the system. So it's in a nutshell, it's a net consumer, same as most of these other storage the products that we have. So looking at our current portfolio, KenGen runs the 7 Forks scheme, where we have 5 big power plants in the hydro, River Tana. So we've looked at that. We've had a study on pump storage. And what has come out is it will be quite challenging to use the existing facilities, because the difference is where the challenge is we have to bring in new turbines and pumps. So for pump storage, you find the turbine becomes a pump. Yeah. So in running on one side, it is on turbine mode, and then running on the other side is pumping mode. So the generator becomes more like a motor to drive the turbine backwards and pump the water. So these turbines sit lower than normal hydro turbines. So we have to do a lot of structural adjustments and new penstocks for this. So, and then you look at the cascade, the water flow. Each power plant provides water to the downstream power plant. So if you look at that and see, it will be quite a challenge to try and do a pumped storage again, also on the existing hydros. So we've been able to develop analyze a few other locations that we think are more viable for pumped storage, using existing water reservoirs, lakes, and probably building another reservoir at a higher level, so that you have the 2 reservoirs, one low and one high. So I think for pump storage, what I can say vis-a-vis every other storage, just to look at the economics, it depends on, a lot of it depends on the nature, on or the terrain, or the topography and the elevation you get. So if you get an elevation where you don't need to do any reservoir, imagine if you have a dam up and then a lake downstream, and then you can be able to install it without doing any creating any reservoir. So it becomes economical based on the topography and the geology you get when you compare to other sources. So what we're planning is to conduct a study to see, in the Kenya context, based on the locations we have identified what would be the most optimum form of storage, and what benefits are they bringing. So that if you need, because like right now batteries, the reaction time is quite fast compared even to pump storage. So if we need that in the system, that an auxiliary service that can respond to frequency changes very fast, then probably batteries become your go-to. So we want to do a study to look at all these benefits from each mode of storage and be able to categorize according to the planned projects moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out, since we have excess capacity at the moment. Could that be used, for example, in kind of powering these pumps and all that? But anyway, I think that's interesting to note. Maybe a quick one from you. What are there any policy or regulatory challenges that have slowed the investment in pump storage, Michael? Or capacity issues in terms of technical capacity?
So for technical capacity, I think if you look at pump storage, is not, as I said, the technology is very developed around the world. So technical capacity will not be a key issue. I think the biggest challenge you have is the geology and the sites. And then when you look at the regulatory environment that we are in currently, we don't have key regulation for what you call the auxiliary services for the grid. So you see, most of the power plants are here to provide capacity. So, but the grid also requires some auxiliary services just to maintain grid stability within acceptable levels. So, depending on how you do the project, like for pump hydros, as I said, it's a net consumer. So we have to get an agreement with the off-taker or the grid operator, so that when he has excess energy coming from cheaper power plants or renewable energy power plants, he can use the energy to be able to pump. So you see, for that requires some bit of regulation. And what cost are you pumping with? Are you pumping at? But the key issue is to look at regulations and see how we can be able to develop regulations that can be able to take in some of these developments that are coming anew, that the grid is, the challenges in the grid have to be taken care of. So there's a bit of miss between regulation and part of our proposal, once the study is done, a key proposal will be to look at the regulation and the operation of the grid to be able to realize some of these benefits for the grid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for those insights. I think it's quite interesting. And I'll now ask Dr. Evan to maybe go into a bit of detail on the project that you're proposing at Strathmore. Maybe just to give some highlights on what are the advantages in achieving these net zero emissions, what is the cost of green hydrogen production, and the barriers preventing, or the challenges that maybe you're encountering, or you think you'll have to overcome. Dr.
Yes, thank you so much, David. This is a project that we started in, it's a 2-year project, and it's, Professor Da Silva had introduced it. It's funded by under the Energy Catalyst program. We are working on it together with the UK company called Stimology. And the whole point is we want to build a system where we can prove that we can store the intermittent renewable energy in form of hydrogen, and then use that hydrogen to generate electricity when we need it. So we are using a process called electrolysis, whereby we take the electricity from the renewable energy and split the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, then store them in different gas chambers. And then when we shall need it, the traditional process of combining or generating the electricity has been through the use of fuel cells. But for us, we're using a different route. We want to use turbines, which will be spanner friendly. By spanner friendly, we mean in case we want to build another system, then we don't have to go to a dealer and buy the system as it has been assembled or designed. So we can get local personnel to design the turbine, and then we generate, we assemble locally and generate electricity. So once we have the turbines, then we are going to, of course, combust the hydrogen and generate electricity, which then goes to the uses that it needs to use. So the system that we are to do is a 25 kilowatt system. It's going to use the solar PV panels in Strathmore, and it will be ready by the first quarter of 2022, that is next year. Of course, once it's ready, we shall invite you to come and see that indeed this is possible. So currently, because this is a new system, it's a new innovation, and as with new innovations, the costs are normally higher. For instance, when we've done market research to see like how much it would cost to generate a unit of electricity or a kilowatt hour of electricity, and we are close to 50 cents US dollars. But the components, the hydrogen components, are becoming cheaper as the supply chain increases, and the key component there is the electrolysis component. And as it becomes cheaper, then we expect that these costs will go lower, and at some point it will, around 2030, studies have shown that it is going to be competitive with other studies. Yes, so what are some of the barriers that we are facing, or the hydrogen market is facing in Africa? Of course, the first, as I've alluded to, is the cost. We've seen that, yes, at current technology and prices, the cost will be high, and if the cost is high, of course, you do expect it will not be possible to invest. But then the other issue is, of course, we do not have any country in sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa, that is doing a lot on hydrogen in terms of policies and regulations, as well as standards. So these are key areas that have to be looked at, so that then the market can be encouraged to go towards that direction. The other issues, like the technical capability in terms of do we have people who are ready to work in this area in the country? Of course, it's a very new area, so we do not have, if you look at the curriculums in most institutions, we do not have any that have come across that is actually mentioning issues with hydrogen energy generation, especially green hydrogen and storage. And then, of course, sometimes people do not, or the market that we are looking at may not be understanding the value that green hydrogen is bringing, especially when we move away from storage per se to other industries where hydrogen is also key or can also be applied. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Evan, for that insight. I think being a new technology, then issues of standards and regulation will come into play. And of course, the costs, I think that is understandable. Maybe a quick one. Is there a similar project elsewhere, or these are first in the world, or?
There are a number of projects that are going on hydrogen energy. In fact, if you go to IEA, they have a database of projects that have been going on. But interestingly, in sub-Saharan Africa, there's only one project that is going on in South Africa. That is in South African mines, mostly to look at the transport. But north of South Africa, we envisage that what we are bringing is going to be the first one to be using this technology. So I think we are setting the pace for south of Sahara and north of Limpopo in terms of this technology.
Okay, that's quite interesting that we are setting the pace in the region, and yeah, really look forward to seeing that project to fruition. Mr. Yusuf, are you able to talk now? Yusuf? Okay, I think he's still having challenges. Then I'll ask Engineer Kimeu, in general, maybe you could just tell us what is the future of energy storage? How will it look like, or how do you see it panning out? You know, both here in this country in terms of what can easily be adapted, and also globally. And maybe you could also go into discussion of maybe some of the challenges in adapting or development of these technologies in this country.
Thank you, David. I think I will just pick it up from my fellow presenters. And in terms of the future of energy storage, one thing you must agree is this is one of the areas we have seen a lot of research and development. 2-3 years ago, there was no discussion around green hydrogen. Now it is something which is really picking up momentum. Then a few years ago, again, even the conventional energy storage forms, we know batteries in no form, whether lead acid or lithium, there was a narrative that this is very expensive. But then we have seen a very fast drop in cost to a point now, then they are making economic sense to be able to store and still be able to return on their investment. So then we are saying going forward, we'll expect one, cost reduction. Number two, then we will expect many other technologies, probably which we have not even envisaged at the moment, which will be able to come into the market. We have seen the increased issues around digitalization in terms of IoT, machine learning, artificial intelligence. That is also a technology which is going to influence the way energy storage is going to be deployed or even be developed in future in terms of now intelligent systems or in terms of monitoring, and be able now to even offer these other services we are looking at. So as a country then, for sure, if you're going to achieve a 100% grid, the way to go is energy storage. We will need to build large sizes of energy storage, dispatchable energy storage. And I think it's just the right time then investors play in this field, because we have just heard from Michael that in number of cases then Geothermal is being vended. In number of cases, Turkana wind at night, then the generation exceeds the demand. Then what happens if that energy can just be stored, and then during the peak demand it is available? So I think time is ripe for us. But again, also there's also the limit of how much variable energies a grid can take. When it exceeds in excess of 20-30%, then the grid becomes instability. So then we are saying storage is going to be very critical now, then to be for us to be able to increase that bit of that component of variable renewable energy in the grid. In terms of the challenges in this area, I think the main thing as a country we need to look at is issues of the policy frameworks around this area. We need to have a regulation around this area. We need to have a framework then. I know we have used to signing of power purchase agreements with off-taker. That is a well-known field. But then if I'm building a large energy storage, what kind of PPA I need to sign? So I think we need a proper policy that can be stewarded by this association or even with the Minister of Energy. Then again, we also need to look at the issues of the training and capacity building around that area. Then we need to develop a specialist who can be able to do that. I think the issue of investment, financing around that area, then we have not seen the likes of World Bank, the likes of AFD, and all these the large financials and DFI bank institutions proposing projects in this space. Then we are saying, is it the right time now? Then we start having finance institution looking in that area, so that if there is an investor then who wants to develop, even our local banks, then they need to have a framework, or they need also to understand this space that they may be able to fund these institutions. So I think for me, in a nutshell, then those are some of the challenges currently being faced in this field, which we need to be addressed progressively to be able now to break the barriers which are currently there in this space. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Engineer Kimeu. Yusuf Sanga, I think I heard you. Are you able to engage now? Okay, it's unfortunate we've not been able to engage him as much as we wanted, but we will proceed, and I'll just do a quick round as we close on the panel, and I'll start with Mr. Michael Ogonji. Maybe you could just tell us what is the future, or how does the future of pumped storage look like in Kenya? Maybe if you're able to, maybe some of the things that KenGen is looking at in this space, and maybe I guess it's a system, or it's a technology that has been there for a while. I think I've seen a question about, is it working elsewhere? And as we are looking at it, and so that we know whether we should actually be investing our time and resources in that. Michael?
So thank you again for the opportunity. The future for pump storage, I'd say, is it looks great. Based on the studies KenGen has conducted, pre-feasibility, we've seen that we have good potential for pumped storage in specific sites. So when you look at it from a country's perspective, is also we need a form of storage, and the overall objective will be to reduce the cost of power, which is a government objective, and reduce our generation from diesel or heavy fuel oil or other forms of hydrocarbons. So if you look at the projections for the country, the demand growth and the supply growth and the kind of projects that are coming, that have been lined up with PPAs and for development, you find that most of them are, very many players are coming in the renewable energy sector in terms of wind and solar. So we also need to strengthen the grid in terms of ancillary services. So pumped storage, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of pumped storage in the system. So based on that, we see that there'll be a future for pumped storage in the country moving forward from now. The next one, KenGen. So in a brief, currently we've conducted a pre-feasibility study on pumped storage, and we are looking at moving on to the next phase will be a full study on the pumped storage. And so we wanted to look at, can do a study for the entire storage, pump or batteries or any other technology, so that it becomes a holistic study on storage from the KenGen's perspective. So because that's an ongoing development in the project, I'll just say that that's where KenGen is, looking at the viability of storage in the system in terms of the type and the quantum, the capacity and the rest. So for pumped storage, I say they've been in Europe, they're quite, Europe, China, America, there are quite many that have been installed. So as I said, I can't remember the first one, the first installation, but earlier in the 20th century, 19 something. So they are proven technology. Quite a number have been installed. Probably I can share with the team in the comment section once I get some of the key power plants. But I know Europe and France and America and the Chinese have good potential and good projects that have been done for pumped storage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And really looking forward to see what KenGen does with regard to pumped storage and even other means of other technologies. And I'll go to Mr. Sami. Sami, and today I'm a bit biased on battery because I guess that's your strength. I would want to ask about you mentioned about costs. What is being done about the cost of battery storage for it to be applicable in commercial scale grid applications? Are there innovations around it to make it cheaper? And I don't know, is Chloride, looking at that space to explore a bit further and invest a bit more in maybe R&D and innovation to improve or to reduce? Because I think one of the things that we've seen is we need to bring down the cost of power, and if storage can be a solution, then we should be looking at it. So maybe just as you wind up, you can speak to that.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, for sure, we are doing lots of research. We've partnered with companies from South Africa, Romania, and we are doing lots of research to see how we can bring down the cost of storage in terms of getting, is the technology we are using, is it the best? Can we get something better than that? So to answer your question, yes, we are doing a lot of that. And then as Engineer Michael has alluded to that, is storage in the grid perspective, we look at energy storage in the grid perspective. It can also be used a lot for stability of the grid. You know, those we call them brownouts or dips in frequencies. So there's also a potential in applying energy storage in our national grid, so that we're able to have a very, very stable grid, that thereby every consumer or user enjoys the ability of having a grid that is uninterrupted, and also it's very stable, most important.
Okay, thank you, Sami, for that. Dr. Evan, as you conclude, maybe you could just give some highlights on what you see in terms of the future of hydrogen storage, and what are the other maybe co-benefits of having this technology in our system.
Yes, thanks, David. Now, the future is bright. Remember, the world is targeting to go net zero emissions by 2050. And we do have a number of sectors that must take radical decisions so that they can then reduce their emissions. Some of the technologies that can help in achieving the net zero emissions include now the use of hydrogen energy. For instance, yes, in the electricity sector, we can use hydrogen to store the energy, but also in other sectors like now manufacturing sector, the steel sector, hydrogen is very useful in terms of, like reduction of iron to steel. We do have the built sector where we are looking at hydrogen can be used to produce thermal energy. We do have transport sector where we are looking at, yes, we know electric vehicles have taken the market, but then for trucks and sometimes trains and shipping industry, we might need to think about hydrogen as the mode of cleaning that sector. So there's a lot of use for hydrogen in decarbonizing the world economy. Coming closer home in Kenya, in what we are doing, we've also identified that besides using our technology to store energy, we can also use the same technology to produce very clean thermal energy in form of steam to our industries. So you find, yes, we do have industries that are relying on biomass issues, and we know the issues we have in terms of deforestation. We have industries that are relying on heavy fuel or fossil fuels. And we are looking at, of course, the economics of introducing the technology to produce the steam to these industries. Again, still using the green energy. And we're also looking at using some of the waste that is available in terms of steam and heat. For instance, I think I need to have a discussion with Michael after this to see how we can incorporate some of the steam that is being lost to the atmosphere and see how we can get that energy into our hydrogen energy system. And of course, see whether it would end up becoming a cheaper form of energy storage as compared to the other technologies. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. for those insights. And I think we are now done with the panel discussion, and I think it has been quite informative. Learned quite a bit about the new technologies and what some of the players in the market are considering. And I will go straight to some of the questions, and I'll be asking sometimes some of the panelists to answer or just specific or in general. I think there was one question about examples of storage facilities countries use in Kenya. Pump storage, I think that has been answered by Michael. There's another one about, for Michael, that is beyond storage is KenGen looking at any other applications specifically for auxiliary services, and in which areas? And which power source would battery energy storage be particularly replacing in terms of dispatchability or least cost of energy basis? And would this be installed at existing power station or upcoming ones? Michael, I don't know whether, I know you have answered quite a bit of it. Is there anything you would want to add on to what you've already said?
So I think the question is from Caroline. So
Yeah.
You're seeing, is KenGen looking at other specific ancillary services? So what we've done as KenGen is we've been doing, we are also currently we're doing a study on ancillary services. So basically we're looking at the ancillary service market and trying to see how we play or how we can play or how we can be able to offer more to the grid in terms of ancillary services. KenGen currently performs these services based on the current PPAs. So the spinning reserve and all the others, the frequency control from the our hydropower plants, and the black start capability from some of the power plants, and so on and so forth. So it's something that KenGen plays quite a role in the provision of ancillary services, especially due to the influx of intermittent energy. But now moving forward, we are seeing that we need to look at it in a critical way. Further to add on this, EPRA is also conducting a study. I don't know how far they've reached on ancillary services. So based on the outcome of those two studies, we'll be able to know the quantum and the role of each player, both generators and consumers in ancillary services. So the other question, which power source would you're looking at the battery energy storage system be replacing? So I think from the government side, it's just to reduce the cost of energy. So we're looking at replacing thermal from HFO or hydrocarbon energy. So that would be the HFO or the diesel that we use for generation. So we replace that by charging the batteries using geothermal or the wind or any other renewable energy source that is available during the low peak. About installation in existing power stations, I think I addressed that earlier and saying the initial study ranked some of doing any moderation in the current power plants as not quite competitive to either doing a new one, but the outcome of the full study will now tell us the location and where we need to install the pump storage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think there's a comment by EPRA that one of the issues of on the issue of losing this, that the sector is in the process of undertaking a study on auxiliary services, and the study is aimed at modeling mostly the pricing framework for auxiliary services. I think this is something Michael has spoken into. There's a general question here from Prof about whether Tesla has any plans for this country or for the region. Anyone who is aware among the panelists?
David, I think
Yes.
what I can comment on this is Tesla have had a regional office in the country for some time. I think we have been in a session with Anton Boru. I think most of them know him, but I think they shut this region's office, of course, citing that then the volume of the business was not making a business case. The business support for this region now is being supported from South Africa. But yes, as we see more projects coming up, we will expect them probably to come back. But I know they have done a number of projects locally. One is with the hotel, I think in Savo or somewhere, where they deployed. They are supporting a 60 kilowatt system with their storage, and then there is also another hotel in Masai Mara, which is also deploying Tesla lithium-ion battery packs. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Then there's a question, I think this one goes to Daktari, about the energy hydrogen system. And Monica is asking, is it modeled for the interconnected system?
If I understand that question correctly, maybe the question is it possible to, connect our system, say, to existing energy systems like the grid, or if it's in a mini grid scenario, the mini grid? Yes. Our system just needs green energy. And in this case, we have, because in Kenya, when we talk about green energy, especially for small systems, we like talking about solar PV. But nonetheless, it can also take other forms of green energy, for instance, hydro, or any other form of green energy. And after that one, we just use that and store that energy now into the two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. And the way we are designing the system to produce the electricity after that, it is such that it is ready in terms of the parameters, the voltage, the frequency, it is ready to be combined for use or to be sent to the grid, or for use with the normal appliances that we do have, at home. If it's the AC appliances, we know the voltage and the frequency requirements. So yes, it is being designed in a way that it is going to be ready for the market.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. Somebody is asking, what is the capacity of the hydrogen system? Dr.
Yes, I've just seen the question also. The capacity, what we are designing is going to be a 25 kilowatt system. So we expect to produce 25 kilowatts, but then of course that is the electrical power that we are expecting to produce. Now, if you work backwards, then of course we are going to see, in terms of the size of the system, how big, say, the hydrogen storage we need. And also, this is, I would say, we are calling it a demonstrator to prove the concept, or a prototype to prove the concept. So it's therefore not yet, the technology is not yet available, say, on commercial basis or on full scale, but we believe that after this, then we can go to larger scales from kilowatts to megawatts. The other thing I could say is the way we are doing this design, it is a design that we can modularize, or it is modularized in that when we want more power, then we just need to get more power input into the system, and then we add more modules inside. For instance, we add more turbines, and then we are going to produce more power. So if we manage to bring this 25 kilowatt system, which from how we are looking at it, we are going to manage to bring it come next year, then we know that we just need to stack a couple of them to get to the power that one would be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ivan, for that response. I think, Esther, if I'm not wrong, is there any other question that I may have missed? I think I've gone through all of them. I'm just checking. If anyone has a question, they can definitely write on the chat box. Yes, are we good? I wouldn't want to leave any question unanswered. Caroline, you'd want to ask a question?
Yes, David, thank you. And thanks to Michael for answering the question I had posed before. And we'll be looking forward to the study that he has just described. I think mine is just to add on to the conversations based on what is going on in other countries. I'm just speaking now from experience. I'm running a utility scale project for battery storage, and I can share some of the challenges we are facing with the utility there, which maybe can be considered when shaping our own battery storage programs. And one of the key ones, which you not believe, is the disposal of these large battery storage systems. The environmental concerns are really causing a problem because it's not yet clear how to dispose lithium ion. It seems that only 5% of the material used can be recycled. And secondly, why I was asking Michael about ancillary services is because, storage has now moved beyond storage, and we're looking at energy arbitrage and ancillary services, which utilities have found to be quite useful. And it's something to consider because, for example, in Kenya, most of our energy is already renewable, in the base load, I mean. So, even looking at battery storage to replace thermal power plants, which only come on during peaking times, we might have to think a bit differently because, our base load is already green. So in that sense, we're not looking to replace one of the major base loads that we already have. So that's just my small contribution. And also on the existing power plants, we found that that's actually a very popular place to install these battery energy systems because it really reduces the overall cost of the project since you don't have to come up with a new generation project. Thank you, David.
Sami, maybe you'd want to respond about the issue of waste management.
Yes, I would say yes, we do take back lead acid batteries. I'll be very specific on lead acid batteries. We have a waste plant that will take that and recycle it. But for lithium ion, because you're still not dealing with that, we still don't have any facility that can process lithium ion batteries. For now, we do not have as chloride oxide.
Okay, good to know. Any other question? Anyone would want to ask a question? You can raise your hand as well. I can see you from here. Anyone with a question before we close? Yes, Bonaudawa.
Oh,
Your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Jugi, for that highly resourceful forum for energy storage. I'm talking on behalf of NITA, National Industrial Training Authority, and we are partnering with KEREA. Now, with this, all records of this important, unique, rare forum be forwarded to the participants because it is still new. There are no curriculums. And I take this rare chance also to thank Professor De Silva, our mentor and our president for IIPEA for bringing such presentations. I kindly request any information like what Waite has presented, if it can be documented and be sent to the participants so that we form a base of competency-based training, which is very important for jobs and self-employment opportunities in all 47 countries through NITA and KEREA. Thank you, David. Please collect all the information and pass to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonaudawa. IIPEA will be sharing the recording and the presentations, some details about this. Any other question before we close? Yes, Tamizan. Proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, David. I just wanted to say that I find this discussion very interesting. I just want to bring in thinking at a different level. As usual, whenever there's a discussion on energy, we're talking about electricity. And I just want to sort of mention that it's also important to look at energy for cooking at household level. So clean cooking technologies. I know that we are talking about large-scale plants and large-scale generation, but at some point we also need to look at energy storage options for other than electricity usage. So for example, I know that there are established frameworks and existing systems, but we should really not forget that there's the other side where a lot of people use very polluting, polluting fuels for household cooking. I think it's good to actually think about it. There are options for LPG, for biogas, for briquettes and stuff like that. And we should also not blind ourselves to the fact that there are other energy storage technologies at the community level, which are also important to think about. Just a comment.
Thank you, Tamizan. I think that's a good intervention. And even at the grid level, I think storage may also translate to more household being connected because of maybe extra capacity that comes with it, and even for off-grid systems, and even promotion of other technologies like even electric cooking, I think is something worth considering. And I think it's something that has been is being researched on at the moment. I think Strathmore is also doing something around it. Thank you so much. Any other question? I think I can take one more and then we can conclude. If any, I see no hand up. I don't see any hand up, and Esther, if you allow me, I think we can now conclude. And before I conclude, I'd just like to thank the panelists. Prof, maybe you can give the closing remarks and then make a comment. Or you won't comment
David,
now?
My desire was just to congratulate you for a very nice moderation. Yeah, I definitely think a lot of good ideas have been bounced to and fro here. I put in the conversation that we have a Tesla installation of 4 mega, arguably the biggest battery, I think, in the country. I stand to be corrected. It is in Kaimoze tea, which is a tea factory that belongs to Williamson in the West. So I think we are beginning to see that actually storage at such level, also in Mara, is part of the future. I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk were to try to build a mega factory for batteries and also electric cars here in Nairobi. As we have a lot of very affordable electricity in Naivasha, they could put a mega factory there and then make it easy for the African people to take up e-mobility and stop producing carbon emissions. So thank you very much. I think this is a nice contribution from IAPEA and from everybody who participate in the future, the clean and green future of Africa. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for that. And I'd like to appreciate everybody for taking time to be in this webinar. The panelists for taking time. Unfortunately, we couldn't engage Yusuf, who was one of our panelists today. And but hopefully we'll engage him some later time. It was a very engaging session. And I also really learned a lot from the panelists. I did know quite a bit about what is happening on energy storage, and really appreciate and thank IPEA for organizing this event. So for me, it's to thank everyone, especially the panelists, for taking time to share the knowledge, and everyone for attending, and for IPEA for organizing this. So for me, thank you for giving me the opportunity to moderate. I hope I've done a good job, and yeah, let's take care and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.